Thank you for clicking in this video. In this gripping tale of survival, trust is shattered, fear takes hold, and escaping the shadows may be the only way to stay alive.
I can still remember the first time I saw the endless red sands of Mars. The cold expanse of the planet stretched out before us like a silent wasteland, completely indifferent to our presence. We were the pioneers, the vanguard of a new age for humanity, carving out our place on a planet that held no life, no mercy. The air was thin, the gravity slightly lighter, and the weight of what we were doing. A group of 150 individuals building a new home on an alien world felt heavy on all our shoulders. Yet, there was excitement, the thrill of discovery, of pushing boundaries. And then, there was the isolation. But none of us knew just how deep that isolation would sink, or what it would do to us. The first sign that something was wrong came almost a year into our mission. We'd found what we thought was an underground reservoir, a potential source of water that could be the key to our survival. But what we discovered wasn't just water. Within it, we found a microscopic organism, something ancient and alien. At first, it was a scientific marvel, a breakthrough that could redefine biology as we knew it. The organism was small, almost imperceptible to the naked eye, yet it thrived in the harsh environment beneath the Martian surface. The scientists named it M03X, a placeholder that never got changed because we quickly realized we had bigger problems than naming new life forms. As the days went on, strange things began to happen. It started with the subtle shifts in behavior among the crew. People who were once rational and calm became obsessed with their work, particularly those who had been in close contact with M03X. They were driven, almost fanatically, to study it, understand it, and, as I would soon learn, to spread it. At first, these changes were easy to dismiss. Stress, isolation, the unnatural environment, all of it could explain away the small outbursts, the odd behavior. But then, those who were most affected began to isolate themselves from the rest of us, forming a kind of closed circle, almost like a cult. My job as the chief engineer kept me busy enough that I didn't notice the full extent of what was happening until it was too late. I was focused on maintaining the colony's infrastructure, ensuring that our life support systems were functioning, that our habitats remained intact against the brutal Martian storms. I was a practical man, not given to flights of fancy or paranoia. But then people started disappearing. It began with Dr. Emery, one of our biologists. She had been leading the research into M03X. One day she was gone just like that. No one saw her leave. There was no record of her on any surveillance footage. It was as if she had simply vanished. And then others followed. More of the scientists, some of the engineers, people who had been among the first to come into contact with the organism. It was around this time that I started having nightmares. Vivid, disturbing dreams where I saw my colleagues, their faces blank and emotionless, standing in the barren wasteland of Mars, their eyes fixed on me with a chilling intensity. I began to suspect that something was terribly wrong. But by then, it was almost impossible to know who to trust. The colony was divided. There were those who had been inoculated, as I came to call them, and the few of us who remained unaffected. The inoculated were easy to spot. They moved with a strange unity, a silent understanding that was deeply unsettling. They seemed connected, somehow all working towards an unseen goal. Whenever I tried to question them, they would only smile and talk about the importance of unity and loyalty to the colony. But their words rang hollow, as if they were reciting a script. I confided in Captain Harris, one of the few people I trusted. He was a no-nonsense kind of man, the kind you needed in a place like this. "Richard," he said to me one night in the dim light of the mess hall, "there's something we're not seeing here. This isn't just stress or cabin fever. It's something else, something much worse." We decided to investigate the disappearance of Dr. Emery and the others. We searched their quarters, found their personal logs, but nothing added up. Their logs were filled with increasingly erratic entries, obsessions with M03X and strange symbols we couldn't decipher. As the days passed, the tension in the colony grew unbearable. The inoculated, as we discovered, had been sneaking out at night, gathering in the tunnels beneath the colony. I had seen them a few times, huddled together, whispering to one another in voices that seemed too soft to carry any real meaning. But there was something else, a light, faint but unmistakable, emanating from deep within the caverns. Captain Harris and I resolved to find out what was going on. It was our last hope of understanding what was happening before the colony fell apart. We waited until the dead of night, when most of the colony was asleep or at least out of sight. With the security systems overridden and our helmets on, we made our way down into the caverns. The air was cooler here, almost damp, and the walls seemed to close in on us as we descended. The deeper we went, the more we felt a growing unease, a sense that we were intruding on something that was never meant to be found. The tunnels eventually led us to a large chamber, and what we saw there froze the blood in our veins. The missing colonists were there, gathered around a massive, pulsating mass that seemed to grow from the very rock itself. It was the source of the light, a sickly greenish glow that bathed the chamber in an eerie, otherworldly hue. The colonists were all kneeling, their eyes vacant, their faces expressionless. They were chanting something, a low, rhythmic murmur that reverberated through the chamber. We couldn't understand the words, but the sound alone filled us with dread. Captain Harris stepped forward, his voice shaking as he tried to call out to them. But the moment he did, their heads snapped towards us in unison, their eyes filled with a cold, alien intelligence. They stood slowly, deliberately, and began to move towards us, their movements eerily synchronized. I could feel the hairs on the back of my neck stand up as I realized they were no longer the people we knew. In that moment, all I could think about was survival. I grabbed Captain Harris by the arm, pulling him back towards the entrance. "We need to go now," I hissed, but it was too late. The colonists began to close in on us, their steps slow but relentless. I saw Harris pull out his weapon, but I knew it wouldn't be enough. We turned and ran, the sound of their footsteps echoing behind us. We barely made it back to the surface, our breaths coming in ragged gasps as we sealed the entrance to the tunnels behind us. I looked at Harris, his face pale under the helmet. "What the hell was that?" he whispered, more to himself than to me. I didn't have an answer, only a growing sense of horror at what we had just witnessed. Those people, our colleagues, had become something else, something no longer human. We returned to the colony, but things only got worse. The inoculated began to move openly, abandoning any pretense of normalcy. They didn't speak to us anymore, didn't acknowledge our presence. They were focused on their task, whatever it was, and nothing we did seemed to matter. The rest of us, though still unaffected, started to band together, trying to figure out what to do next. But there was no escaping the truth. We were outnumbered and outmatched. Then, one day, Captain Harris was gone. No one saw him leave, no one heard anything. His quarters were empty, his gear still in place. It was as if he had never been there at all. Panic began to set in among the remaining crew. We were being picked off one by one, and there was nothing we could do to stop it. I tried to organize an evacuation, but it was impossible. The inoculated had control of the colony's systems, and there was no way we could override them. I found myself alone more often than not, wandering the empty halls of the colony, my mind racing with the possibilities. Was there any way out? Any way to stop this madness? The nights were the worst, dark, silent, and filled with the sense of something watching me from the shadows. Sleep became impossible. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the chamber again, the pulsing mass, the vacant eyes of the inoculated. Then came the day when I realized I was the last one left. The others had either disappeared or joined the inoculated. I was alone in a colony that had become a graveyard, surrounded by people who were no longer people. I knew they were coming for me. It was only a matter of time. And then something changed. I stopped feeling fear. Instead, there was a cold resignation, a realization that this was the end. But the end didn't come as I expected. Instead, they began to speak to me, the inoculated. They told me about the entity beneath the surface, how it had been there long before we arrived, how it had waited patiently for new hosts. They told me that it was only a matter of time before I joined them, that resistance was futile. And as they spoke, I felt something begin to stir within me. A strange sensation, like a seed taking root deep inside my mind. It was then that I understood the true horror of what had happened. The entity wasn't just controlling them. It was becoming them. And now it was becoming me. I could feel it growing, spreading through my thoughts, taking over every part of who I was. There was no escape, no fighting it. I was already lost. And so, as I sit here writing this last entry, I know that my time is almost up. Soon, I will join them in the tunnels, beneath the surface of this desolate world. I will become part of the collective, another vessel for the entity that waits in the darkness. And when the next mission arrives, they will find a colony that seems normal at first glance, until they realize that everyone is smiling the same smile, speaking the same words, moving with the same purpose. And by then, it will be too late for them as well. Mars is not empty, and we are not alone. We never were.
If you want to watch another story, there is another video appearing on your screen now. Share your thoughts and experiences in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell for more spine-chilling stories.